Good morning. I am going to admit something to you right now that I probably shouldn't say as a creative director leading a brand studio team, but I really do not like the design process of branding. I'm talking about logo design, picking color palettes and fonts and like documenting all that stuff. I just do not thrive in this type of design, which is why I did very little like logo design freelance work back when I freelanced. I love working with a brand. I love refining one, changing the perception that people have through like the production of different creative works. But yeah, designing the brand itself, not my favorite. Guess what I have to work on today? At ConvertKit, we're about to start work with a new design service provider to help us with getting all of the assets and like imagery we need created done, because we're a very small team internally, just us two, and there's just not enough of us to go around. To make this an effective partnership with an agency though, we have to essentially be able to take all of the knowledge and context we have about our brand and hand it over to them in a file, and that's where brand guidelines come in. Like I said, these are not my favorite things to create. I've been procrastinating on this for weeks, and today is the day that we get it done. We're gonna have a sprint, myself and David, who is based in the US, so he'll be starting his day a little bit later, but we're gonna get this done today. We're gonna get them finished. We're gonna get everything documented to help the agency know what is on brand and what is not. Now you might be asking, ConvertKit, you are like a super fancy, profitable company. Why do you not have brand guidelines already? Great question. We've been kind of evolving our brand over the past few years, and that means that the documentation we do have about our brand is a little bit outdated and quite honestly not detailed enough for an agency to be able to use it super effectively. This is a look at what we have so far. As you can see, there's a lot of blank pages. We've set aside the sections that we think we need to include, and David's done a bunch of great work on showing our colors and how they should be used. There's just a lot of more pages to fill in, and so that is what I'm about to get to work on. I figured that bringing you along for this process, A, might make it more fun for me, and B, will show you what we think about as a brand design team for what we include in our brand guidelines, and I'll be able to show you the finished product at the end. Okay, I've made a good start. Now I'm gonna have a quick stand up with David to check we're on the same page about who is going to do what to finish these today. As you can see as well, let me just turn the guides off. I've also rearranged the file a bit so we can see like this is the brand personality stuff, logos, type, color, icons. I'm about to add illustrations underneath just so we can see how many pages are in each section. All right, David and I are now on track for what we're gonna do to end the day. But David, how do you feel about making brand guidelines?
I love it so much. If I could do
You liar!
I'm just kidding. It's one of those things that you don't hate doing, don't love doing, but you know it's really necessary.
Well said. All right, let's get this thing finished. We did it, we got the brand guidelines finished on time, and now I get to walk you through the file we've created. And when I say finished, I mean finished for now, because this is definitely still a work in progress. There's more we want to add to it or clarify, especially as we've gotten into working with an agency and seeing them use our brand guidelines. It's highlighted a few key areas where we could be a little bit clearer about what's on brand, what isn't, but let me walk you through the file that we have for now. So to start with, I want to give a huge shout out to David, who you met just before. He did so much great work on this. All of the like organization and little fine-tuned details that you see in this file, they were all him. So I can't take credit for that, but I do want to walk you through it and show you what we created together. So as you can see in the file, we went back to having everything all in one row rather than like going along in the sections that I'd started to arrange it in. We just felt like this worked better for us. But instead of walking you through the file like this, I'm gonna walk you through in prototype view because it's gonna look a lot prettier. So our cover has now been updated with this lovely photo of Carrie from one of our creator stories, a profile we wrote about her. She's a voiceover artist. A really important part of our brand is to make creators the heroes of it. And so why not put a creator on the front cover of our brand guidelines, you know? Okay, so first we have our brand personality. This, you can pause the screen if you wanna read it in full, but this is our write-up on what we aim for with our brand, what personality we aim to portray. And then we've highlighted the brave, a mentor, easygoing, confidence, trust as the keywords that we want to stand out. This is how these brand personalities show up in our tone of voice, how they show up in our visuals, and this was all content that had been written previously. I just like arranged it in this way to present it as part of the guidelines, because I think it's really important, along with knowing what colors to use, how to use the logo, etc. Knowing why we use things in that way is also really important, and that's what context this gives. So, speaking of the logo, we have links in here to go to Google Drive folders to download our static logos, also our animated logos. That's just really helpful to have it all in one place. We have not currently gone to the lengths of like defining exactly what spacing to give the logo, but mostly because we're working with other designers and keeping control of this right now, so we can give feedback if things are feeling a little bit too tight, but I think that is something that we will want to add in. Next up, typography. So these are the fonts that we use, and instead of just like writing the font, we like wrote the font as well as its use, like in the font. That was terribly explained. We've included a download link as well. And also here we put some examples of using type, just to sort of give a sense of the scale that we aim for. This was one of David's great additions, because we haven't specified the exact sizes of fonts, because these guidelines can be applied to a website, printed material, digital ads, like whatever. And so font sizes are going to change based on the like setting it's being used in and the scale of the finished product. So I think this gives some good examples as like guidelines, and also allows us to call out some important things like not center aligning text if it wraps more than 3 lines, using accents, things like that. Some more examples here of how we like to use like hand-drawn check marks or like other icons and bullet lists. The fact that sometimes we do hand-drawn things, and yeah, that we highlight keywords in a phrase. For color, this was a really hard one to explain, because like these are our main brand colors, but like these ones here are the ones that we mostly use for backgrounds now. I still think we could do a slightly better job explaining this, especially because this one here also gets used for backgrounds. But at least all the hex codes are there and like ready for referencing. Again, David's put some examples in here and called out what colors are used so that someone can easily get a sense for what's happening and how we put these colors together. This page here is showing like how we combine colors, mostly that we use like tones of the same color, or is it shades? I'm never quite sure. This is an area that I think we could improve on in our guidelines to make it clearer that we're not like going to put a red line on top of a green background, for example. This was the place that we called it out, don't mix colors that lack harmony, but I think this could be made clearer by putting like a correct version of this graphic next to it to show the difference, that it would be yellow swoosh instead. Icons, we didn't include them all in here because that is a large icon library, but we put a link to the icon file in Figma, and we also mentioned that we're using the My Icons icon set, so if someone who is working on designs for us already has access to that, they can just search in that icon set. Even though this is not like a design system or a component library by any means, we felt like it was important to include a mention of buttons, just because this is something that gets put into digital ads in particular, which is something that external designers will be creating for us more often than we create them ourselves. And so we just needed to describe, our cool quirky style where we have the one straight corner and the 3 rounded, and also like what color the text should be inside the button. Illustrations. All right, so this was a section that I was responsible for in this file, and it was really hard to put together because we are still kind of in the process of figuring this out. Like none of these illustrations here are vectors yet, and we also weren't able to actually link to an illustrations file because it doesn't yet exist. We're still working on it, and I definitely owe you an update about that sometime soon. But I think the descriptions here do a good job of describing when you would use each type of illustration. It's obviously going to be made stronger when we can include real examples of these in use, which we're starting to have now, which is exciting. And then on this page here, we just left some extra notes about color choices for illustrations and how they should be tonal as well, with 800 brush as the main shape. And speaking of brushes, we also included this page documenting which Procreate brushes we use to create our illustrations so that other people can come in and create them too. And we will obviously need to expand this as well once we get into vectorizing, with a little bit more information on the vectorizing process and how to keep some of like the charm of the brushes and the watercolor while being like a scalable vector. So that is to come. Textures. So this was a really fun one to add in, just encouraging the use of like little hand-drawn accents and elements and things like this. I think we could do a better job of highlighting what going overboard means versus the level of like accents we expect. But again, game that can come in a future iteration. And we did include these examples here of textures, curve dividers, hand lettering in use. We felt like it was important to include this section on photography because it is such a big part of our brand. And yeah, we've included here photos of creators using ConvertKit. These link out to Google Drive folders to access, because we try not to use stock images most of the time, apart from like our blog headers, because that's like content that's created so often. But yeah, anywhere on our website, when you see a face, that is a photo that we probably took of a creator who uses ConvertKit. Another example here of putting photos in shapes, making the photo the focus of an asset. Product imagery, this is again something that is very much still a work in progress, but the key thing here is that we like to showcase our product using real looking examples. We don't use like lorem ipsum in them. And in the example, we can see that we use like the tones of the swoosh behind, the darker tone for the browser UI, and have these floating pieces as well. I'm going to be making another video in my design system series soon, which will share some updates not only on the illustration system like I mentioned before, but also about product imagery, because this has been an area we've often struggled with, and I know that it is often something that marketing designers struggle with. I've heard it time and time again through the Inside Marketing Design podcast. And David created something the other day that I think has really unlocked us in this area. So I want to share an update with you and show you that cool work that he's been doing to make our product imagery better and also easier to create. All right, the last piece in this file is our motto graphics. This is like a series of graphics we intend to expand on. We just haven't done it for a while. These have been the two in use for a long time. But yeah, they can be used on swag or as like a motivational graphic, things like that. And that's the end. And so we just left a little encouragement to contact David or I via Slack if anyone has any questions. It's been really interesting to see this brand guidelines file in use. And like I said, look at the areas where we could be a little bit clearer in our explanation, or when we thought something was clear and then it turned out absolutely wasn't. It's really tricky to get all of your like gut feel on what's on brand and what isn't onto paper with defined rules, and I feel like we've made a lot of progress in getting this initial file in place. Tell me how you feel about creating brand guidelines and what the brand guidelines look like for your company. What have we missed? What's missing from our file, do you think, that could make it easier for folks to step in and create things that are on brand for us? Is there anything you think we wasted time on that's totally unnecessary? I'd love to hear about it, and especially how it compares to the brand guidelines for your company down below in the comments. Like I said, coming up soon, I'll share an update with you about our overall marketing site design system and the progress we've been making on that. But in the meantime, you can watch the last update right here.